Hello, welcome to the Liberty North Show. This is episode 5. We are very excited to have special guest David Ragsdale, the CEO and founder of RePlatformVegas. The website is RePlatformVegas.com, and they're having a conference. When is the conference, David?
March 8th through 10th.
8th through 10th. And we just found out that there is a ball on the Friday.
Yeah, I can't exactly tell you.
No, okay, it's a surprise.
It's a little bit. Some of the people who will be there are a bit secret, but
okay, all
really
right.
Exciting.
You didn't hear it here, David. Pleasure to have you here. Welcome.
Fight back against the corporate-controlled, centralized economy, destroying your way of life. Join the team behind Defeat the Mandates and the COVID Litigation Conference at RePlatform, the Freedom Economy Convention in Las Vegas. Unite around shared values as we build an entire ecosystem for a thriving, uncanceled America. Defend liberty at RePlatformVegas.com.
So the way we wanted to start is just kind of to get your experience and how you've gotten to this point. Maybe explain your life and also RePlatform Vegas and the idea behind it.
Sure. So I'm a 4th generation Angelino, 4th or 5th. I think 4th, maybe 5th. My family came out to LA in 1902. So we've been here for a while. And, I grew up in just a normal, great family, middle class. My older brothers and I went to Catholic school. My parents weren't particularly political. They had been at Berkeley in the 60s and had, some liberal views on a lot of things, but they're also fairly traditional. We went to mass, said please and thank you, stuff like that, right? Good manners. And, I went to pretty good schools. And after college, I lived abroad for about 10 years in Asia and Europe. I went to grad school in Singapore. And then I moved back to America in 2000 and at the end of 2011 back to LA. And wow, like I could already tell. So like I grew up in like the 90s was really my decade, right? When I went to high school and mainly college in the 90s. And, there was LA's a liberal town and, that was always sort of like the atmosphere, but it was open, right? We had a Republican mayor of LA. There was people would love to argue with each other over stuff. But when I got back in 2011, I could feel it that like, especially towards social conservatives, right? And I'm a pro-life Catholic. I'm not a very good Catholic, right? I'm very sinful, but I'm pro-life.
We all
are. And yeah. I mean, that's sort of a baseline for me. But when I got back in 2011, there was this like very authoritarian feel in the air and a lot of this wasn't done by like native Angelinos. It was people who had moved to LA and then turned around and said, this is what being a California means. And it's like,
they imposed it onto it.
Yeah, it's like, dude, we've been here before Hollywood. Shut up. And we'll be here after you guys leave. So, and then I ended up working at Live Nation on the festivals team, which was pretty fun. You could tell there was some like proto wokeness entering. I worked at the global headquarters in Beverly Hills, and you could sort of feel things starting to turn in that direction. Probably not as bad as it got, but I could definitely sense a vibe of like corporate culture and not really these so-called like 60s values that they had said that they were promoting, like freedom of speech and tolerance. And you could tell that wasn't really what was happening. And then long story short, I got sober. I ended up working as a housing coordinator at a homeless shelter. And then COVID hit. And I'll be very careful about what I say about this because I don't want any strikes to accrue to you.
Well, so you can say whatever you want, actually, and maybe I'll just cut some stuff out for for YouTube. But say whatever you want, and we'll
We'll
curate it for YouTube.
Yeah, which platform gets which part?
Right. Exactly.
Yeah. Well, I only say like I've been on YouTube before, so I say like the medical intervention, right?
Right.
I don't need. Everyone knows what I mean.
Yeah.
So I got hired. Steve Kirsch actually had put together he had basically put together this group, and I was one of the first hires of what became later VSRF, and that was led by Louisa Clary, who was just phenomenal leader.
VSRF is what? Sorry.
The Business Safety Research Foundation.
Gotcha.
And we were working together to sort of bring together doctors and scientists and different and sort of exchange information about what was going on. And this was in July, August, September of 2021.
2021, right at the beginning, right?
Yeah. And then this guy out of Chicago named Matt Toon, this really cool guy, he was getting a little bit of pressure and then a lot of pressure from his workplace. And he worked at this big media corporation, and I won't name it because, it's not he still has his job, which is a good thing. But he was feeling a lot of pressure from the mandates. And so he managed to get in contact with like Brett Weinstein and all these people. And then finally Steve, and he was like, we need to do something to defeat the mandates. And so Steve put him in contact with us and with Louisa and Matt. And then we were a team. We put together Defeat the Mandates, and in DC and then in LA. And, we were doing a lot of stuff aside from those two things to really bring down the mandate regime in America. And in that, we were a part of it wasn't just us. There was a huge coalition and millions of Americans who weren't part of any group. And we were all working together as a movement. And we were fairly successful. The mandates came down, and no one is defending the mandates anymore. And then
that changed. It took a while, but that's changed. Yeah, I don't think they can get us back into that.
No, and they are not just indefensible anymore, but even the Biden administration is now suing companies that didn't give exemption. So even the Democrats are now going to blame corporations, and these corporations are like, what are you talking about? You're the ones who told us to do this. And the Democrats are like, no, we're going to blame you for the mandates now. So, that should be
that's their MO, blaming other people for their mistakes and for
but it's also like these corporations went along with the Democrats, not just on the COVID stuff, but on censorship and all this. If they have to have a little bit of consequence for aligning themselves with this authoritarian establishment that has
100%. Yeah.
And
they lost it. They just went crazy.
Yeah, I don't care. I used to be a very free market guy, and I still am in a way, but I don't care. I want a lot of these corporations to just go bust, right? I'm not someone who's anymore being like, oh, corporate America. Obviously, they're stupid and they're incompetent and they're not innovating and they're hiding behind wokeness. So while we were doing Defeat the Mandates, we got deplatformed, not just from old Twitter and other social media, though that too. We were kicked off a lot of B2B services, like our payment processor, like our mass emails, all these services you need to like do things as a company or an organization. We were algorithmically removed. Like we didn't do anything illegal. We actually, we rallied a year after January 6th at the Lincoln Memorial, and we got our permit from the Park Service in record time. Like, so we had good relations with the government, actually, and nothing violent, nothing hateful. We were always promoting, we have Democrats and liberals and conservatives and Republicans. And so there was nothing about our messaging that conveyed anything that would violate community standards under any type of rubric. There was no way that should apply to us. And we were kicked off a lot of these B2B services, and consequently, we were thrown into the parallel economy.
So there's the silver lining right there.
Well, yes and no.
I'm sure that it was the transition period was challenging.
Yeah, and we're obviously because we were thrown into the parallel economy, we understand that there's no other economy to be in going forward. So it's not like a question of like choice or like aesthetics or like, this would be nice. That's just where we are and where we have to build. But one of the things that we experienced, right, was that there is a quality problem in the parallel economy.
Right.
And this
Please go into
needs,
that.
yeah, and this really was the impetus behind RePlatform and why we're doing this is we really want to generate a place for people to come together and to spin up joyful quality innovation.
And it not just be gimmicky stuff, and it not just be. Sorry, go ahead, Simon.
Yeah, well, no, I can see what you're referring to when I look at some of the stuff that has popped up in the parallel economy and some of the attempts that have been made. Some of it doesn't really understand the depth of what we need to do, given that the system that we're leaving had real foundations that drove things to a certain standard. Eventually, we have to jump straight to this higher standard without those foundations being there. It's like we have to go right to the tip of the spear to an extent to be able to compete with what's already developed within the mainstream economy.
Yeah. I mean, like, I think a great example, and like, even there's a place for like, so when we think of like, first of all, let's talk about the grift, right? So I actually have a counterintuitive view on this. There's nothing wrong with grift per se, because grift is like a signal that this thing has legs, right? Big tech had grift. The railroads was so much grift, right? And that's just a part
It's
of
the nature of marketing, actually.
yeah. It's not the grift is not a problem if you're having actual innovation. It only becomes a problem when grift replaces actual new things being created, right? And so what we see, if you saw the Super Bowl and you look at the ads on the Super Bowl, it's not even just nostalgia. It's like an echo of nostalgia. It's like you look around and you're like, aside from food delivery and like hookup apps, what actually has corporate America developed? What really has big tech done that innovative? I mean, look at gaming, right? Gaming is like everything's worse than 10 years ago, it seems, like in terms of the graphics and everything. And I'm not even a gamer, and I can just look at two things 10 years apart and say, oh, this one looks more modern, and that's from 10 years ago. So there's like a stagnation problem. And like the gimmicks are okay, right? So Jeremy Boring does a great thing. He is able to quickly turn around consumer products very quickly. That's a really useful thing, actually. And so like if like Jeremy Boring, instead of taking one product of his, if you considered him like a P&G, not a PG, like a Unilever, right? Like there's a Jeremy Boring Industries, and he's starting to put out one at a time these different consumer products. That's really cool. But what will be even cooler is, in doing that, he's got to develop some systems that might be pretty innovative, right? Like his ability to quickly do that is actually, to me, more interesting than any one thing he puts out.
Right. It's the overall the overall influence and ability to move attention and grab attention, and if that's put towards something, and you're completely right. I mean, Simon, both of you, we need to build a whole new infrastructure, and that is very challenging. But at the same time, I think that this movement and the conservative movement has pulled all of the great minds that were in the center, that were left leaning. So I think we have the brain capital, if you will, to do it. It's just, you're right, it needs to be focused, it needs to be explicit, it needs to be very actionable. And I think that you're right, Jerry Boring. So Daily Wire, Jeremy Boring, right?
Yeah, with Jeremy's razors.
The razors. I was gonna say, like, being able to find a means of suddenly having razors of equivalent quality right away and make it not only a meme, but a fully produced, scaled product.
Yeah.
It is quite startling, actually. It's quite startling. And the fact that he's done it numerous times, you're right. What are his systems? Like, how does he scale things so quickly and so mimetically? It's fascinating.
Yeah, and that is really like, that's the so I I'm not even against gimmicks, right? I'm not against gimmicks. I'm not actually particularly against grift, right? And they all have their place in the system. And and the reason I bring up Jeremy Boring is that when I talk to people like bankers, payment system guys, farmers, tech people, insurance people, legal people, all these people in these different, especially the services who are working on building like a parallel service economy, which is really interesting. And sometimes we don't think about that enough. Sometimes Jeremy does come up, right? And I feel very strongly about that. Like, those aren't gimmicks because he's able to do it so quickly. And if he had only done one, right? If Jeremy had only released like a Jeremy's razor, then you could say, okay, that was a gimmick, right? But because he has this ability, like he has some type of system, and obviously, he's not going to share that. But it's stuff like that. We need to be able to do that with a lot of things, right? Consumer goods, but then other things as well. And
right.
so,
So,
yep.
sorry, go ahead.
No, I'm done.
So it starts with the products, right? Because you have Target, you have Bud Light, you have all these companies that were like, we don't want to give our money to these insane people that hate us and that are actively trying to destroy, the foundation of Western society, Western civilization. So let's create these alternative consumer products. But you're right, we need. So what are the foundational elements that we need? We need. So you got kicked off of a payment processing platform. We need that.
Yeah, I mean, we have GabPay, which is great.
Right,
They're gonna be there.
right. I saw the video of the CEO or the founder
COO,
of it.
Dan Eddy, a great guy. Lonnie's going to be there. It's just they're a phenomenal company. They're doing great things, and if I could, so let's keep GabPay here, but actually, before that, right? The most important company in the parallel economy today is Give, Send, Go, because Give, Send, Go is probably the first touch point for normal people to pay into the parallel economy, right? So if someone, right, that is such an important thing that most people have probably touched, and I'm going to repeat this, the parallel economy for the first time through Give, Send, Go, without even realizing it, being like, oh, I'm donating to this pro-life thing, or the Canadian truckers obviously was
Convoy.
the big,
Yeah. It was crazy. It was amazing.
And so Give, Send, Go, and their founders are going to be at RePlatform too. But that's like a gateway, right? So if people can get comfortable giving even their like a mainstream credit card and paying online into the parallel economy the first time, right? Then boom, you can then move them into other things. But it's really for a lot of people, especially conservatives, because conservatives are conservative, which means that they're cautious and they're not exactly, a lot of them aren't risk takers. They're not particularly edgy. And with a lot of things, when it comes to money and paying for things, they're not particularly adventurous. And that's sort of the big challenge that the parallel economy has, is it's customer based, has a little bit of an attitudinal issue that somehow, and obviously as you get younger and you get baser, that's not such a problem. But really, like, you have this big group of boomer conservatives.
They're stuck in their ways.
They're stuck in their ways. And what Give, Send, Go did, though, is it moved a lot of them. So that was like a phenomenal example of a parallel economy company becoming acceptable and preferable to this huge block of boomer conservatives.
So what is it about the infrastructure of Give, Send, Go that makes it a part of the parallel economy?
Well, that's the thing. And this is really it's a chicken or egg debate, because, what is a parallel economy? Is it neutral access, or is it values aligned? And we're going to be hosting that debate. And, it depends. But I would say probably what aligns them all is it's like uncancelable, right?
Yeah.
Whereas first of all, it's really easy to use. and frankly, a lot of parallel economy tech companies have not always had the best user experience, but Give Send Go is real easy to use, and that helps, right? It's not overly complicated. You don't go through down rabbit holes while you're on Give Send Go. It's easy, so that helps, and it has a a mission that is not aligned with the establishment, and that helps too. And so because of that, it becomes this gateway into the parallel economy for a lot of normie conservatives, and especially people or normie church going people.
Would you consider Twitter as part of the parallel economy now with Elon Musk, Twitter X?
I would say some of the things they're going to be. I would say not. I would say it can't. I would say Grok is. I would say when he gets his payment system is. Although I'm obviously still going to be using Gab because I don't. I like Elon on some things, not on everything. But so I'm quite comfortable on Gab. I think it really would depend. I think it's moving in that direction because, and that's especially true after his big FU to advertisers at the Deal Book conference a few months ago.
His literal FU.
Yeah, literally. Yeah.
Yeah.
So
well, he does seem to be moving in that direction. I mean, he seems to be trying to build a platform that has that uncancelable quality. You look at people like Tucker Carlson or the recent film, The War on Children, that was put out by Landon and Robbie Starbuck. I mean, that's blown up to the extent that they're able to release it for free for a week. And that's the kind of film that would have been canceled right away anywhere else.
Yeah.
Right.
I mean, media thing is our media actually like dissident or right wing or whatever you want to call it, anti-establishment, because we have quite a few red pill progressives now too, that's actually always been very sophisticated. And I think there's a little bit of a chip on its shoulder that a lot of, like, in my whole lifetime, and I'm not that old, conservatives have been fairly sophisticated in the media. I think that I think one thing that they could do a little more is do a little bit more funding for like independent films and like edgy artists.
Mm-hmm.
And Curtis Yarvin talks about this a lot. The issue there, of course, is that there's a huge chunk of our movement who just don't want to fund that stuff because of their values. So you have a little bit of a clash there, but that's okay too. But the media, we're really good at, right? And we're getting even better at, right? The sophistication of our anti-establishment media universe is just going from strength to strength.
Right. There was a big hiccup, throughout Trump's presidency, and then him getting kicked off Twitter, and then Parler getting removed. And us understanding we need the actual we need the servers as an infrastructure, right? The internet, the foundation of the internet. So, but so it seems like it's kind of rerouted, and now it's just has exponential growth in terms of ability to sustain itself. I see what you're saying. The media itself, the content, it's always been there, or it's been, it's been more prevalent in the last, I'd say 10 years. So you're referring to older Republicans that were good with the media.
Yeah, I think, there is so the issue wasn't like our like conservative or anti-left or anti-liberal left establishment media sophistication in the 70s and 80s and 90s and the Bush era. The problem was they were sophisticated. They just happened to have had incorrect assumptions about the nature of what we were actually living under. So it wasn't that they didn't have the media apparatus. It's just they were doing things like using that to support the Iraq war, right? Like, but once, and that was for whatever people say about him, and I'm going to vote for him. I supported DeSantis, and DeSantis lost, so now I'm supporting Trump. And we have people in our movement who are supporting Kennedy, and people who are supporting Trump, and no one's supporting Biden. But we love both candidates, and I love
even lefties are like reluctant to. Even
Yeah.
the most liberal people, they're like, I guess I have to. I can't vote Trump.
Yeah. But what Trump did is, and I think even Kennedy supporters will agree, is Trump, no one can ever take this away from him. He essentially removed the incorrect assumption that the non-establishment left had about what was going on.
The veil.
The veil. He removed the veil, and he forced the establishment to stop hiding and to start publicly doing these things that they can never go back on. They can never pretend to go back into the shadows and say, "Oh, that doesn't really happen." He put himself out there for them to show the full strength of their of what they are and what they do, and that's pretty amazing, because now we woke up, right?
Yeah, it's like that whole saying of you take the most flack when you're over the target. So he put himself over the target and forced them to really expend all their ammunition at once. And it just became clear as day for so many people.
Yeah.
Really beneficial for the world, I have to say. It was a pretty sweet move.
That's the silver lining of the whole, what did you call it? The medical intervention.
Yeah. It's my no strike jargon I use.
Right. Yeah.
On YouTube.
The silver lining to it.
Intervention. So, and just to close off what I was saying about media is so if anyone remembers the 2004 presidential campaign, George W. Bush versus John Kerry, there was no more sophisticated a media ecosystem than the pro George W. Bush. And that included people like Gateway Pundit back then and National Review, and all the stars aligned. And the mainstream media was very anti-Bush, right? But they got played over and over again. They would just do stuff, and the anti-establishment media would just volley it up and spike the ball over. Even Trump in 2016, which was a totally different but another amazing one, they're about comparable, because, and the problem is, of course, is what they were ultimately supporting was the Bush administration, right? But that's not a knock against the conservative sophistication with media. 2004 was really, people should go back and look at that and what the conservative media did that year. It was really amazing, because George W. Bush definitely should have lost that election. And not only did he win, but he won the popular vote and over 50%, which had not happened. Clinton did not get over 50% both time he ran in the 90s. And so that it was just really sophisticated. And
it was almost propaganda, right?
Well,
to a certain extent, they propagandized.
There was some propaganda, but there was also some really clever things they did. Like, for example, one example is, and I'll give you an example, is and this was by the campaign itself. So the George W. Bush campaign released a video, I think it was like in really late, their first campaign video, like really late in 2003 or first quarter in 2004, that slightly featured just a little bit of the towers coming down. And they only released it to the media, and they said, "Oh, this is going to be our first campaign ad." And the media was so outraged. How dare you use 9/11? That the media just ran the ad nonstop. And the campaign didn't have to pay to run it, because
they were commenting on it. They thought they were using it against him.
Yeah, and they did a bunch, and not just the campaign, but a lot of people who became big in the populist right and the Trump thing, a lot of them cut their teeth in 2004 and learned a lot. And so a very long point I'm trying to make is, all the other things in the parallel economy need that level of sophistication: banking, farming, healthcare, education, all these things, right? Our media is good. Our media right now is good and getting better. but we need to put a little more, like especially investors need to put more attention on some of these other industries that could use the lift.
And that's part of the goal of this Replatform Vegas conference, right? Is
Yeah.
to bring people together and bring attention to it.
Yeah, I mean, if you're I mean, frankly, if you're like a conservative and you have like investable funds, you're probably hit up with like 100 pitch decks a week, right? And it must be really hard work to try to filter out what is like a useful thing to invest in and what might not be ready yet. And so what we're offering at Replatform is a place not only for like consumers and families to get some optimism about like, hey, we're working on it. We're building these things so you don't have to stress out so much and be so like full of despair. But it's also a great place for investors to come and like look under the hood, kick the wheels, and check out a few companies and see, hey, this, you know, it might be more efficient for them than going through these 100 pitch decks every week.
So I'm curious, we're a homeschooling, unschooling family. What have you seen in the space of education in terms of, these parallel expressions? What have you come across there?
Well, I mean, so I'll be real honest. Education and the homeschooling vertical or industry is pretty well developed. I would say it's on par with media. And it probably, I mean, if you go to any like homeschooling conference, there'll be like 1,000 vendors there with like really good curriculum. And I did classics and economics for my undergrad. So, you know, everything like Jeremy Wayne Tate is doing and like his credentialing model, I think is right on track. I don't know, to be honest, that like education seems to be doing well, both in like attracting the consumers, pushing out quality products, and getting the investors. So we like, well, we were putting this together and we were like, okay, what industries? And then we're like, great, education. We're like, actually, they're good, right? They don't necessarily need, their conferences are well attended. They have plenty of companies doing great work in it. And, you know, so it's not that it's just not a vertical that we really spent much time on because there didn't seem to be that need.
Has it been developed in terms of post-secondary? Have you seen any of that?
I mean, then you get into the question of, do we really need so many post-secondary options?
It's true. It's a big question. That's why I asked, because, a lot of people are watching, places like Harvard just collapse, right? Their reputation is collapsing. They're being consumed by wokeism. And a lot of people are watching the kind of overwhelming student debt that just swallows kids' lives. That seems kind of like a pointless ritual for a lot of the population. And so I do feel like the role of the post-secondary sort of industry educationally is going to completely change. And yeah, I would agree. It's probably going to downsize significantly because it's just bloated for no reason.
Yeah. I mean, you have huge, massive spikes. I mean, what you're going to have is you're going to see a huge collapse in the number of small liberal arts colleges in America in the next 20 years. So many are just going to go under, but you have sort of like conservative, socially conservative schools, you know, your Hillsdale, your Thomas Aquinas, there are many others. They're just the number of applications are just skyrocketing. They're going to be more built. You have what obviously Chris Rufo is doing in Florida. What the model we really need actually is we need to take over, like, it can't just be like New College. We need to have the next step is for a governor to just hand over an entire university system, right? And I don't mean just by like appointing Ben Sass as president or creating like a program in like, you know, the James Madison program. I mean, say, hey, the left Democrats do this, so I'm going to stack the Board of Regents of the university and the state one, both of them. And we're going to totally upend this. Like, we're going to like do totally amazing technical and trades. We're going to turn our undergraduate program into a 2-year.
From within.
Yeah, Rick Perry tried to do it's so funny. And if you look at some of our failures about 10 years ago, Rick Perry tried to do this. He wanted to take he asked that, Texas, all these board of regents at University of Texas or what, Texas A&M, I forgot which one. They're all Republican appointed. And he said, "Hey, could you look at doing a 3-year so that, people can just I don't understand why it shouldn't take 4 years, actually. They don't spend that much time studying. They're not like taking that many courses. It's just a waste." And instead of doing it, they proceeded to spend hundreds of millions of dollars on wokeness. And so we actually need our governor.
You mean down the toilet?
Yeah. So,
Yeah.
we need a governor to be like, you know what? I'm creating a 5-year combined undergraduate MD program, and we're going to have a hospital attached to it. And we're not doing, and it's not going to be like for the social left. And we're going to do our own, that residency. We're going to have our own certifications. We need like for secondary, we need to take over the full stack of a public university system-wide.
Yeah.
So the governor of a state has the power to do that, just to completely replace the board.
Well, he probably wouldn't. You would probably need a trifecta Republican state where you have both houses of the legislature, and that they would probably have to just pass a bill that would expand the board of regents, or I don't know how you get rid of incumbent, but I assume they, there's legislative process you would have to do, but like in Florida, DeSantis doesn't seem to have a problem getting bills passed in Florida to do what he wants. And you would just need someone to like do what DeSantis is doing, but then like
next level.
Yeah, next level.
Fascinating.
Interesting. So to backtrack, what I was getting at was the silver lining of the whole, the last 3 years, this medical intervention, really was seeing that there is 5th generation warfare that has been happening for the last 6 decades, really, I guess, since the 60s. There's the long march through the institutions. This originated as a communist infiltration. And they infiltrated the universities with these Marxist professors and ideas. And then, it's culminated to what we have now. But you're exactly right. Trump was the wrecking ball that just exposed it all, because if we didn't have Trump, we would have just been going on the same path, and they wouldn't have had to pull out all the cards. They wouldn't have had to fake a whole, well, I have pretty radical ideas on what happened in the last couple of years, but so we won't get into that. But so now we know we're fighting this war, and that's one of the aspects of what we're doing on this show, the Liberty North Show, is to explore the 5th generation warfare and try to develop tactics to fight against it. And we're doing it from a Canadian perspective, because me and Simon here are from the Great White North. But so the parallel economy is exactly what we need, and Canada does not have even close to the sophistication in this parallel economy that there is going on in the States. But hopefully we can try to get that a little more done here.
Yeah, you guys just have to hope that, I don't know how to pronounce his last name, but Pierre.
Yeah.
My French is awful. But is he going to?
There's no way he doesn't get elected if there's a legitimate election.
No. The Liberals are going to be like wiped out, right?
But Simon, what we spoke about the other day is that the Liberals now are pushing to have mail-in ballots. They're pushing to have 3-day election, because right now, Canada, we still have paper ballots in person. You need an ID. So our election system has been quite robust and quite legitimate, but they're pushing for these things that happened in 2020, right? So hopefully they don't get their foothold in the election system, but we'll see.
I think the bigger concern is, does Pierre pull like a Stephen Harper, or does he really go for some fundamental transformation?
He has a certain amount of common sense that he's bringing to a lot of issues. That being said, that's not hard to do, because the left is so radical that it's easy to come across as very common sense. There's a few issues that he's kind of in the realm of, the uniparty, this sort of woke uniparty. So, for example, there was a bill that was a bill they put forward to stop conversion therapy, claiming that there's this big problem with like Bible camps converting gay people. It wasn't really something that was happening. right? It wasn't an actual threat to the LGBT community at the time. But they passed this bill, and so what they did was in the bill they basically stripped away all parental rights, and this bill states that if parents have a gender nonconforming child and they do anything other than the gender affirmative model, it's now illegal.
Yeah.
And it even states in the bill that you cannot consider conversion therapy in the direction of heterosexuality towards like trans or any of that. No one can be accused of converting children that way. You can only be accused of converting children towards heterosexuality. So they really, really specifically made this bill about disempowering parents and forcing parents to go down the path of the gender affirmative model. And Polyev did, in fact, help vote that bill into place. So there's examples like that where I'm like, oof, what is going on there? That being said, he's now stating publicly that he believes it's wrong to be giving children puberty blockers. And, he's starting to push back. So we'll see, but he really does ride the fence sometimes with the uniparty policies.
Yeah. And, you almost have to wonder if he gets too big of a majority. That's almost a bad thing because he's going to get a lot of like conservatives from like the Maritimes, maybe even a few from PEI and Ontario, and and we all know what Ontario conservatives did during COVID, and so they're going to be right. So too big of a majority is maybe not such a good thing for him.
Yeah, it's true. Well, and we'll see what happens because the vote is currently so fractured right now in Canada that it's tough to get a majority with what they've got going on. The Liberals and the NDPs have a coalition right now to try to disrupt anything like that going on. So they claim to be two different parties, but they're working in lockstep really to try to disrupt that. So we'll see. It's 2025. It's still a ways away. But Polyev is certainly whooping Trudeau pretty harshly right now.
So so talking about the truckers and the parallel economy in Canada, the likelihood of, and I don't understand the Canadian legal system, but obviously some of the things that Trudeau did towards the truckers have somehow been declared something like illicit or not.
Yes. So what happened was,
I can explain it. Yeah.
So Trudeau invoked the Emergencies Act, which is really supposed to be something that's invoked during wartime. So this gives the government and the police special powers, to do all sorts of things that would normally be considered unconstitutional. So he invoked that in response to the Freedom Convoy. And then that was what empowered the government to work with banks and to freeze the bank accounts, not only of truckers, but of people who were just donating to the truckers campaign. It was recently declared in a court case that Trudeau's invocation of the Emergencies Act was in fact illegal. And so this is it's a devastating blow to him and his party. They claim they're going to fight it. We'll see what they're able to do. But it's important because right now you have a lot of cases where there are people fighting back because of what was done to them during that time. People who lost their jobs, the mandates ruined their lives on some level or another. They were trying to keep, their church open or their shop open. A lot of them were in the position where they were losing to the government. And now that the Emergencies Act has been declared illegal, this gives precedent for a ton of Canadians to come forward with a whole lot of lawsuits. And a lot of those are occurring right now.
That's awesome. Has this made it easier for you guys to use alternative payment systems?
Well, actually,
yeah, go ahead.
I was going to ask you. So payment system, so Gab Pay, and it looks like the infrastructure there is quite good. I would imagine that there's going to be competing payment platforms that are going to emerge, and it looks like Elon's talking about that with Twitter. We'll see what happens there. But what about currency? So in my mind, the most important reason for a parallel economy and even a parallel society where we have, the economy is one thing, but when you have the education, medicine, when you have, we have our own court systems, let's say, that are separate from these corrupt court systems that are owned by George Soros. The most important part of that is because this whole corrupt, rotten thing is going to crumble at some point. And look at the dollar. The countries around the world, even Putin said this in the Tucker interview, countries around the world are decreasing their foreign reserve of the US dollar. Why? Because we can't even afford to pay the interest on the debt. So the dollar, I mean, it seems impossible, or it did seem impossible not too long ago, for the dollar to essentially collapse. Collapse is a big word, but people are losing faith in the US dollar, and it is a fiat currency. So, it is essentially backed by nothing and useless. Sorry. All that to say, where does crypto come into play there? How do currencies come into play? And what does Gab use the currency? Does it use the US dollar, or does it have its own?
No, so I just want to say first out, our crypto brothers and sisters are the spear of the nation.
Yeah.
They are leading the way. And they are the smartest, the bravest, the weirdest, the most creative people. And so, and again, they're in a similar way to like the homeschooling education model, the crypto, they have, and I feel even stupid saying this because it's so obvious, an entirely built out ecosystem, right? So, and I'm not I dabble and stuff like that. I did graduate work in economics, so I'm not an idiot.
You're familiar with it, but
yeah. So
it's a whole different world, though. Yeah.
And again, when I say they're the spear of our nation in terms of the parallel economy nation, they're leading the way, right? They're the ones going up, and all power to them. Glory to the crypto heroes. But the thing is, and that's its own thing. And think of us as like the families and the people, and like not the first, not that vanguard, right? And they're real important. But it's also true that you can enter the parallel economy without crypto, and that for many people, they get confused about crypto, or it seems so overwhelming, or such a big step, or such a big like statement of like almost like a little bit of like prepper. And what we're trying to do is say, actually, it's much more intuitive to enter the parallel economy, and you can enter here, and you can enter there, and you can enter there, and you don't have to stay forever. You can go right back out, right? It's not an all or nothing thing. And if we make it so totally encompassing, people aren't going to come in, and we're not going to get the investment we need. And if we start to purity spiral, like, oh my gosh, you're using Gmail, then you know what I mean? And we have our vanguard, we have those people, and all purity to the crypto people, and in a way, the homeschooling people, those are our vanguard. What we're trying to do is we're trying to figure out, where can a normal person come in and see value? That's it.
Interesting. Yeah.
Yeah.
Because the next step is the growth.
Yeah.
So what are some of the spaces then that people are entering where they feel a little more comfortable, where it's appeasing that sort of conservative value set? Like, what are some of the areas that are successfully bringing those people in a way that helps them feel like this isn't that kind of prepper mentality?
Well, 3, right? So I definitely payment systems, because people are getting freaked out by the debanking. That's entered the mainstream, right?
Oh, good. Trudeau really helped with that then.
I mean, that was the spark, but then also, a lot of things that are happening, people are, SNL then makes fun of people. And then that actually, like that thing in 2004 with George W. Bush, they think they're criticizing something, but by doing that, they're telling people about it who really wouldn't have understood it before. Thank you, SNL. So banking and payment systems, also, healthcare. Healthcare is a huge one.
Insurance?
Well, yeah. So I mean,
Is that included in healthcare?
it's so obviously you're Canadian, so I don't know how to translate this to the Great White North, but in our system, it can include things like MetaShare, um, but it's also about, instead of being, finding a medical practitioner who shares your values, like for example in the medical intervention, and a lot of things like a company like the wellness company is doing, and a lot of other companies, a lot of practitioners have also decided to just go into a payment for service model, where before, instead of dealing with insurance companies, um, but then there are a lot of ancillary companies that need to start to help connect them. So there's a lot of opportunity in like medical services. And if they can be more nimble and quick than these big mainstream healthcare medical service companies, then there's a lot of opportunity in that. Food, obviously, and farming. That's just like people understand that one with inflation, also that people are becoming aware that what they're doing to the food supply is making all of us sick. And that's actually something that came from the left, right? That
Yes.
was a thing that the left, or not all the left, but a part of the left started understanding decades ago, and it came up from them. And the weird thing with COVID is it now flipped, and so a lot of those people were
Yeah.
like, wait a second, how am I a far right person? But now the good thing about the parallel economy is we're all working together now. By
Yeah.
making these progressives an enemy, they're now working with Christians and social conservatives, even if they don't agree on everything, right?
Yeah, that's amazing. I remember actually this happening very vividly because I remember the period in time when suddenly Facebook started deleting alternative health groups that were really emergent from left-wing communities. And, Facebook groups that were like hundreds of thousands of people big were just getting nuked. Looking back, it's true. It was really beneficial that these more, progressive groups were experiencing that level of censorship and that level of, those attacks. In Canada, the government is going really hard trying to stop the natural health product industry. I don't know if you've heard about this, but they're putting through bills that are um, trying to put natural health products under the same exact legal scrutiny as pharmaceutical products. And so they're trying to claim that the dangers of natural health products are directly and legally equivalent to the dangers of pharmaceutical interventions. So this is really crippling the natural health product industry here, in a really, really dangerous way, and it's increased government control around the whole industry. And they're doing things like they're claiming that natural health product companies now have to have a label describing what's in their product and the safety of their product, but the label has to be detached from the bottle. And so all these companies are scrambling. They have to spend hundreds of thousands of dollars printing these giant new labels that aren't on the bottle, but attached to the bottle, sticking off the side. So just weird loopholes to essentially crush the industry and empower the pharmaceutical industry. So they're now in a big struggle, a battle for that, and certainly a battle for, trying to find more parallel economies, ways outside of the government system to thrive. But one of the things they're coming up against is this idea of regulation, that if it's not regulated by the government, then people can put super dangerous products to market. Is there any obstacles like that? When you look at putting natural health products to market, how's that side of it managed in the parallel economy?
So one of the things that happen is, as we know, certain non-approved, although they won the Nobel Prize, medical interventions that were essentially banned by governments, even though it was very safe and very effective, right?
One of the longest or
It won the Nobel Prize, but somehow a couple
the
years
safety
later
profile is
became
incredible. Yeah.
very dangerous. So anyway,
We will not speak their name.
yeah, but what did that do? It taught people how to find things, right? So I bet you most people I don't know in Canada, but I bet you most people in America know someone who, if they call, could get their hands on that, even during it, right? It seemed like everyone, even if they were against it, they were like, yeah, my cousin, if I really needed it, I could get it from my cousin because my cousin knows a guy. It's almost like they force people to turn these like healthcare products into like dealers, and they created this like massive incentive for people to begin to distrust what big pharma was saying because it didn't align with what they were actually experiencing, and B, taught them to take a little bit more incentive and go and actively search for things. So that's why like healthcare, these products, that's why it's a huge growth sector, because by the governments and corporations doing that, it actually got people to stop being so lazy.
Wow. Yeah, that's
I,
true. That's
I,
taking more responsibility, really, for
Yeah.
yourself.
For all these things the government is doing to like tamp down the parallel economy is actually helping the parallel economy because it's sort of getting people out of this post-war stupor of just like passively accepting what TV tells me to do.
and not wanting to talk about politics,
Yeah. Oh,
just accept it.
TV tells me to
They'll
buy
take care
this,
of
so
us.
TV tells me 50 dentists tell me to buy this, so I'm gonna buy this. Right? What a way to live, but that's how most people did, and the government is doing its best to get us awake.
It seems like it seems we're at like an inflection point where the harder they try to propagandize and suppress, the more people are calling them out for BS. Because it's just obvious, right? Like most of the things that the left pushes and that these libtards push is not just not true. It's the opposite of the truth, and it's just so blatant. So you have so many people looking at it and saying, and then the aspect of cost of living, it affecting people directly, affecting their stomachs. That really wakes people up, and people are looking. Oh, I'm frozen here. People are looking for alternatives.
Yeah, and what I would so everyone who's like interested in the parallel economy, whether to build something or they have an idea or they want to invest in it, I'm gonna say something a little bit like controversial, which is don't worry about like how people vote or like how any one election goes or like what people say and stuff like that. Look, try to find that, because even a vote is not a revealed preference, right? Look at people's revealed preference. So if we see that, for example, the booster uptake rate collapses to like almost nothing, even though polls say that like 53% still say it's safe and effective, that's just what they're saying. And they may even vote for someone who supports that. But if they're not actually doing that, then they don't really believe it. They just feel that they need to present that way. And so when you're looking at like the opportunities for the parallel economy, look at these revealed preferences instead of like necessarily like election tabulations. Which elections are mainly like when people vote, it's mainly just rhetorical anyway. It's not necessarily how they're actually going to be living.
Right. You're talking more about a signal, not necessarily, because a lot of conservatives would freak out if they heard you say, if they understood that as don't go vote, there was a big 2022 and 2020 even like get the vote out, like don't say that elections don't matter, but you're not saying elections
Yeah,
don't matter.
no,
You're saying
elections
it's
matter.
not,
You
you're
should
saying it's not the
definitely,
signal.
yeah, you should definitely vote. What I'm talking about more is if you're looking at like your market,
Yeah.
don't necessarily think that that doesn't include a lot of like Pierre Trudeau or Justin Trudeau and
Right.
Joe Biden voters, right? Because like
So
people
don't
are
completely alienate.
no, it's not about alienating. It's more like the market is bigger than you might think. Don't just think it's like 48%, right? Because people what they say and then what they actually think and do is not necessarily connected. So for depending on the product or service, this parallel economy could be a lot bigger market than you might think just looking at red districts and blue districts.
Gotcha.
Yeah, that's really good to know. I had a really interesting experience. I independently released a documentary called Cut, and I was trying to find alternative ways of releasing this film. So, I was pushed to this because I was initially working with Vimeo, and I really didn't enjoy working with them. They were taking a 20% cut. There was like a 2-month delay in getting paid out for the purchases of the film. And so I was exploring some alternatives and looking at some parallel economy options. I ended up working, getting brought onto an artist label on the XRP ledger. And so they specifically work with artists using XRP. And what we did was we created a screening for my film in the metaverse, and had people purchase NFTs as tickets to get into this metaverse screening. And so the whole thing ended up being, you purchase one of the NFTs, you get access to the film in the metaverse. You get put into a draw to win a number of things. You'll get access to this private community. And so the NFT had like all these different value points to it. And it was kind of cool, like, to see something to create a film release entirely in this sort of parallel economy. I'm curious, have you seen much in terms of the parallel economy in the realm of the metaverse and things like that? Like, what are you seeing in that space?
Well, no, I mean, there's this company called, I hope I'm getting it right, Lore. And I know that they're working on in terms of like a system for funding things like documentaries. So I'm seeing stuff on like the funding side. In terms of like the distribution side, there's definitely, I know that Rumble's building out a lot of capacity. There's a lot of other platforms and channels that are building out. I think probably for like independent films and documentary, it's still sort of like a marketing thing, right? Because of just the amount of content that's out there. And I'm not myself like a filmmaker, so I don't have that much experience in that. In terms of the metaverse, so there's like a so this is where maybe some of the crypto bros and the majority of our movements maybe clash a little, is the transhumanism thing, like that, like it's that like idea of like the escapism, the virtual reality thing does not sit comfortably with, I would say, most of our tribes. And it doesn't mean that there can't be shared work on things like payment systems or communication systems and stuff like that. But probably there's not going to be a party in a virtual reality between like a health freedom dude and like a VR guy, right? It's just probably that type of like interaction is just probably not going to happen. But that's okay too, because when this thing shakes out, it doesn't mean we're all going to live in the same happy village with each other.
Yeah.
But that doesn't mean we can't make tools together now.
Right. And we're going to disagree a lot with people, but that's the beauty of, let's say, the new right. I don't know if anybody has called it that, but let's say the new right, there's plenty of clashing ideas but the beauty of it is that we're open to that. Like, we're cool with that.
Yeah.
Like, we'll agree to disagree on plenty of stuff.
Yeah. And there's something to be said about, like, if I'm not particularly a great fan of virtual reality, and then I meet someone who works in virtual reality and we have some shared project we're working on, there's just something also for me to be like, maybe I don't have to lead with my chin with this guy. Maybe while we're working on this thing together, I don't have to just spout my opinions about what I think about his passion all the time. Maybe I could even just shut my mouth for a minute and work together. You know what I don't know.
Yes,
Yeah,
absolutely. Well, things being so politically divided right now is really not beneficial for the functioning of society on so many levels. You certainly need people to be able to do business across the political divide and throughout the political spectrum. You need to be able to communicate effectively with people in that regard. But it's also, and this comes up a lot, that when a country, when a nation is not politically divided, there's the opportunity for the left and the right to have a tension that is creative. And you want the creative tension between the left and the right. Right now, there's such a push to have the left and the right hate each other so maniacally that, it's great to hear this, because I think there needs to be that kind of that mindset that puts aside those extreme politically divisive ways of being and operating for something much bigger and better beyond the kind of mess that we're stuck in right now.
Yeah. I mean, I definitely think like there's a true divide between someone who is like a supporter of the establishment in such a way that they become um, harmful to a project you're working on,
Yeah.
right? So it would be, I think, to be honest, if someone were like, "Oh, I'm planning to vote for Biden," I'd be like, "Oh," and then it'd be like, "Well, maybe we could work on this thing over here together." But if that person was like really like, "Oh my gosh," I think Elon Musk should be arrested, and I think like people should lose their health insurance if they're doing the mandates. At that point, it becomes like, no, on that, I can't work with you on anything nor what I want to.
Oh, you're just a psychopath.
You're what I'm building to work around. Like
Right.
I'm not gonna. You don't work with the workaround.
You're the problem.
You don't build with the worker. I'm working around you, dude.
Yeah.
But so
100%.
that duality, that tension, that creative tension, it doesn't just happen externally; it happens internally. Like we all,
Yeah.
it's a very important thing to being well established or well grounded as a human being. You need to have that left right debate within yourself. And
Yeah.
if you're a critical thinking human being, you need to be able to acknowledge, first of all, acknowledge that you can be wrong and that you're likely wrong about a lot of things, or at least that your future self is going to look back and say, that was stupid. Like, why did I think that? And you're going to develop. And so you have to be open-minded to being wrong. But so that right left thing is so crucial because it's the conservative and the liberal in you. We all have that. The new left, the leftism is just insanity, right? And it's unnatural, really. It's
Because
not
it's based on an infiltration
right.
of the left
It's
by an
orchestrated.
apolitical entity, in my opinion. That's when we're looking at fifth generation warfare.
Mhm.
One of the key tenets of it is that you can't know who's doing the attacking and that there's a sort of veil around the attacks. They're shrouded in secrecy. And that's part of what's going on. The left, because of its progressive nature, has been infiltrated by people who have totally apolitical agendas. They want to take
and don't care about them at all.
It's not that they'll use left or right. They don't care. That's why you have the concept of the uniparty. But it is true. I think what you're saying is that the left has been infiltrated by something that has pushed it into this extreme. And so it's become totally unnatural to the role that the left normally plays within that creative tension relationship.
Yeah.
It reminds me, actually, so you were saying that in 2011 you came back to the States,
Yeah.
and you saw this divisiveness, and it really seems to have originated a lot with Obama.
Yeah, no, 100%. And it wasn't even it wasn't divisiveness. It was the
ideas, these crazy ideas. Gotcha.
it was this. It was definitely Obama. When Obama got elected, there was this shared belief amongst elites, cultural elites, economic elites, that this was over and that a lot of the cultural divisions that had occurred in the 90s and during the George Bush administration, it was done. And that there was no more debate. There was not going to be anything, that simply the social left had won and had won forever. It would be like they viewed people of faith and social conservatives like they viewed flat earthers. Like we don't have to accommodate their views in our society.
Putin came out and aligned with a whole bunch of left-wing talking points. He's just playing with the
Oh yeah, he's throwing hard. It's amazing.
He's like saying that he prefers Biden, that Biden's more experienced.
But I didn't see the whole interview. Did you watch the whole interview?
Not yet, no.
So it seemed to me like that was taken out of context.
I'm sure they have. Yeah. I mean,
he said Biden's more experienced and Biden is more predictable, but they're like, oh look, he likes Biden. Did you see this, David? That they're saying Putin thinks Biden's more experienced.
He's
and
the
they're
preference.
running
He
with
says,
it.
yeah, they're saying that, but yeah, he's choosing Biden, and that apparently they're claiming he said that Tucker Carlson is dangerous, and it's just interesting because you have layers of propaganda. You go and read the articles, and it
I think it's a bad
states.
translation, probably too.
But I think Putin is like putting out some propaganda of his own to really mess with North American media. I think he is trolling. So you have Putin's layer of propaganda, and then you have the North American propagandists trying to twist it for their own stuff. So it's like 2 layers of propaganda.
It's a mind fuck.
Yeah, and also I think one thing that even people on the right in America have trouble understanding, I think this is true of anyone who comes from like the English tradition. So I would include Canadians, England, Australians in this mix, is that even people on the right, even people on the populist or anti-globalist rights, we still have this idea that English liberal civilization is the only legitimate civilization. And so we always want to import people into our own like struggles. Putin, whatever he is or isn't, whatever you think of him or don't think of him, he is the leader of one of the world's more important civilization, which is the Russian civilization, which goes back a very long time and does very interesting things and art, all these things, right?
Much longer than America.
Yeah, and you don't have that many of these civilizations still in existence. China is one, English American is another, Russia is obviously one. And I don't think he actually cares that much about, like, I'll give you an example. Like, I don't think he loses any sleep over the fact that kids in America and Canada are being transitioned. I think he's
He does talk about it though. I've
he
seen him
talks
talk
about
about
it
it and
only
call
to
it
the fact-
insane.
only to show people, look how crazy they are.
Yeah.
I don't think he actually cares. He only cares that it not get imported to his civilization, and he uses that to go to the global south and say they've gone completely nuts. Now, he doesn't, but in the sense that he actually wants to like help the American traditionalists or the right, I don't think that's true. I think obviously there's an agreement on some social issues, but he's not really playing in what we're playing in two different spheres here. And so I think that when he talks about like US politicians, he's like or reporters like Tucker, he's legitimately speaking from the position as like, think of him as like an alien, right? Like if an alien came down and it was like, I'm the emperor of this alien civilization, and like he probably wouldn't care that much what we're doing to each other. He would only care about how, insofar as it affected him and his people. And that's the same thing, right? Like he's genuinely not that interested in our internal struggles, only where those impact him. And in terms of Biden's been a very good president for him.
But
this is what he's saying to an extent. Allegedly.
the Nord Stream pipeline,
I don't think he cares that much about them. I think he thinks that he, in a way, I think he tried to go towards Europe, and I think that like settled that for him. And in a way, I think everything that's happening is confirming some things for him where he's like, great. So I'm done with that, right? It's like when you have like maybe an ex-girlfriend who does something like blows up your car, and you were like, okay, I'm not going to think about getting back with her.
all right, we're done.
Yeah,
That's
exactly.
not good for us. It's not good for us at all.
It's not good for Germany, I'll tell you that much.
I mean, Germany's they've destroyed themselves almost more than we have here in Canada. What they've done with their energy sector is it's suicide. It's
not
civilizational suicide almost. Like you're the recipe for absolute disaster. But let's so a little Putin talk is always interesting.
Just sprinkle it in there.
Yeah, just throw it in there.
Hey, Vlad, what's your opinion on the parallel economy, Vlad?
Yeah. I'd like to know. What is the Russian parallel economy, if there is one? Geez, what's going on there?
Ooh, I don't think there it's the black market. Actually, that's interesting. So the parallel economy is kind of like a legitimate black market.
Well, actually, if you go, that's why we use we're RePlatform the Freedom Economy Convention, because parallel economy is a little bit new and it's a little bit sophisticated, which is great. But also, like, if you Google it, a lot of definitions include like the underground economy, and some people still associate it with like illegal trade in illegal things. And so we just went with freedom economy. We use it interchangeably. Some people may not. That's okay.
The freedom economy?
Yeah. So we use freedom economy and parallel economy, and for us, they mean the same thing.
I got you, because there's connotation with got you, black market.
Yeah.
Understood. So we've been going for a while. I mean, I'm sure we can chat for hours, but let's wrap it up, and maybe we finish off on, is there anything particularly interesting in what, I mean, everything you're doing seems interesting, but something that is very recent, that is an aspect of growth within the parallel economy, or for the RePlatform Vegas conference?
Yeah, I mean, we are doing we have a lot of like fun surprises. So we're a first year event, so we want to make sure we calibrate expectations for that. And it's gonna be really joyful, and it's Vegas, so it'll be fun. And it's gonna be 3 days, and we're gonna have keynotes and breakouts and panels, and we have like our own accelerator within it. And it's
accelerator.
Yeah, we have a group of people who work in like startups who and a lot of them were already coming as like sponsors or exhibitors, and then they got together, which is really cool and part of like what we want to happen. And they came back to us and they're like, hey, we want to do an accelerator and we want to test it out at RePlatform, like a startup accelerator. And we were like, great, we're the place to do it. And so we're going to be, aside from like the main conference, which is like, there'll be a trade show with a lot of different companies. There'll be keynotes and panels and breakouts, and we're having like different evening events. Mickey Willis is premiering Plandemic the Musical.
That's amazing.
Plandemic the Musical. That's
on Saturday night so that's really cool on the 9th. But we're also going to have a lot of like pop-up things that different people are organizing, right? Because we can't like write everything. Like, we want these things to like organically happen.
Yep.
So things will be popping up from people, and you just have to go RePlatformVegas.com and check it out, and it's gonna be pretty joyful.
Awesome.
That's awesome. I'm so glad we have some people from our Breakaway USA team in attendance there.
It's gonna be great.
Yeah, I might have to veer off from there for the last day, veer off from our other conference for the last day, and see what's happening in Vegas. David, pleasure meeting you, talking to you. Thanks for coming on. Let's talk again.
Absolutely. Yeah, I really appreciate
the conference. Well, yeah. I'll tell you what we've learned.
Do a recap, and for sure.
Sure. Yeah. I really, you guys are coming at all of this from a really free-minded vantage point. And your apolitical notions, I think, are really important. So I'm really excited to see everything that's coming from what you're doing.
Thanks, man. It was great to talk with you.
Right on.
As well. All right. Take care, folks.
Bye-bye.
Trudeau regime.
The New World Order agenda.
Canadian insight.
Without free thought, there's no free will. We can't even say that this is Democrat or Republican.
That is not a left-wing, right-wing issue.
It's a world economic forum.
Communist warfare. Canada's
reputation. Fifth generation warfare.
The line between citizen and soldier is gone.